Thanks, me. Oh, where I'm looking here, Natalie, it literally looked like you went and sat yourself down right next to Laura. Okay, Baruch Hashem. I got in. Oh my goodness, I got into the computer, I got into my house, and it all just happened. So we're blessed, we're blessed. It is Thursday night again. I don't know, but there we go. As long as we have Thursday night again, then we're okay, and we're ready for our greeting of Kislev. Can't believe that either, because that's where we are. So today when I saw somebody in the shop and they asked me how my little one, my youngest was, I said, well, he's turning 19 in a couple of weeks and he's in Eretz Yisrael. And she was like, I feel the same way. And that's where we are. And in Hashem, we should all be ready to take ourselves, lift ourselves up, and transport ourselves to the Holy Land. But while we are waiting and preparing, we're going to learn, we're going to grow, we're going to focus, we're going to do all the things that we need to, and Ora is going to help us to inspire ourselves through Kislev. And hopefully during Kislev, we're all going to be packing our bags anyway and joining ourselves in the Holy Land. If my tambourines are itching, I can see them trying to jump off their shelf, and we just literally ready to go. So, Ora, it is a pleasure to have you with us. And I'm going to keep quiet now, and then we'll do it, and then we'll remind ourselves before we finish that we are going to still be mafresh challah, even though I did already once today, and now we're doing sourdough tonight. So let's
go. Thanks, Ro. Okay, so first of all, I can see the share has been sponsored Le'ilu Nishmas Etel Resha Bat Yehuda Leib Halevi.
Okay, that's Janice Sugarman's mum.
Okay. And also if I can just add two other names for Rafua, Ariella Chaya Bat Dana and Emmanuel Simchat Tzvi Ben Leah Shalamet. We should just hear only good news.
Amen. So I'm going to just quickly add then Natanel Yehuda Ben Shlomet Bina, and all of Klal Yisrael, every single one of our hostages, our soldiers, our chayalim, our chayalot, and literally all of Klal Yisrael. So let's get it together.
Amen. Okay. So hi ladies, thank you for joining, and especially as always, thank you to those of you who are willing to appear on your camera. And I appreciate that there are some of you who don't want to be on the camera and want to be lying in bed or whatever you're doing. That's totally fine, but it's just always helpful not to talk into the void. So I just like
no, Natalie must have finished her supper early, right?
Natalie can eat supper while we're talking. She's fine to keep going. That's fine. Relax. Okay. So for those of us who have discussed this topic before, I'm going to apologize for the introduction to this concept, which many of you may have heard, but because I don't know exactly who's here, I'm going to give this introduction again. Because we're talking about the power of the month of Kislev, I just want to explain what it is that we're talking about when we talk about the power of a month, is the idea that every month has this unique sort of light or blessing that comes with every single month, and it's something that's drawn down from above. It's a spiritual concept. And we have a monthly opportunity to sort of be vessels for this light, to tune into this light. So the world was created in a very unique way that every single month was invested with a certain kind of power, a certain kind of energy, and we are able to draw something out of every month. In other words, there's no such thing as just going through a year and here we are back again at the same point again. Every month comes with a very unique growth opportunity, and it's almost like every month you can kind of take a plug it into the charger and draw some kind of power out of that month that's unique to that month. But we have to know where to put our plug in. We've got to know where to stick the plug in order to really sort of draw something out of it. So I want to talk a little bit about what the recharge for this month is so that you know what you can specifically draw out of this month. And our hints to this concept comes from the Sefer Yetzirah, which is a Kabbalistic work, which gives us lots of different kind of hints as to places that we can kind of tune into to sort of draw this out. So I'm going to bring a few little examples from that as practical ways that we can sort of tune into this month. As well as that, I want to talk a little bit about the specific power of Hanukkah, because that's the lead up. We're leading up to Hanukkah. So we've got Rosh Chodesh of Kislev on Monday. So we can already start kind of welcoming this energy in. And then we, on the lead up to Hanukkah, so know what it is that we kind of trying to connect to over Hanukkah. And then how we can take what we've drawn out of Kislev and out of Hanukkah and move forward out of this month and beyond, holding on to those concepts and holding on to that energy. So let's first talk about what particular energy is drawn down in the month of Kislev. So in the Gemara, it says that when it discusses Hanukkah, it first mentions the story. It says one small jug of oil, which was intended to burn for one night, lasted 8 nights, which is always what we talk about as the miracle of Hanukkah. And then it says, on the following year, they, meaning the sages of the time, established these days as holy days for singing praise and offering thanks. So, in other words, Hanukkah wasn't celebrated on that year where the actual miracle happened. They waited for another year, almost like, I guess, till the anniversary of that event. And the next year, they celebrated that event. But why? Why did they wait till the next year? So only when that season came around again, only when that month came around again, and the Chachamim of the time perceived the nature of the previous year's events, and they sensed that the energies of these miracles were re-established again this next year, and that same light had come into the world that came in last year that allowed the Hanukkah story to happen. Then they created a celebration around that, because, in other words, they were saying that energy had re-entered the world, and therefore it's available for us to draw down as well. If it was there last year and it's there the next year, it's there always. When the month of Kislev comes in, some kind of almost like unusual light and energy enters the world, and it's there for the taking, whichever year you find yourself alive in. Okay, so here we are many, many years away from that story, but this energy and this power and this light is still as readily accessible and available to us if we know how to draw it down. So it says, by confirming the fact of this reappearance, our Chachamim empowered us to also be able to tap into this miraculous light and draw it into our own personal lives. When we talk about the word Kislev, one of the sort of understandings of the word Kislev is that if you divide the word is kis and lev as in lamed vav, 36. So kis is a pocket. A pocket is a space where something can be hidden. It can get hidden inside that space. So it says the reason that it's called Kislev is the month during which Hanukkah falls is a place where there's a hidden 36. There's something 36 that's hidden inside the pocket of this month, something that's not obvious. And what we're going to refer to and what we're going to talk to is that the thing that is hidden in this month is this unusual light that enters the world at Hanukkah time, which is called the Or Haganuz, a spiritual, unusual, mystical light that enters the world at Hanukkah time. We'll hold on to that concept and we'll go back to it again just now. But that's what it's talking about when it says Kislev. Hidden in the pocket of this month is this hidden light that's this 36 that refers to this Or Haganuz, this unusual spiritual light. So we've just stepped, well, we haven't stepped out of it yet. We are nearing the end of the month of Cheshvan. We're about a step out of the month of Cheshvan. And Cheshvan is an interesting month. I guess it's an interesting month in that it's not such an interesting month, because we stepped out of Tishrei and Elul, which were full of, feasting and fasting and celebrations and coming together and a lot of davening and a lot of being in shul. And all of a sudden, we hit the month of Cheshvan, which is, it looks like nothing's happening in the month of Cheshvan. And yes, it gives us an opportunity to kind of catch our breath after the roller coaster that came before that. And also, we always say that in the month of Cheshvan holds in it what's called Acharei HaChagim. It's that month that all the stuff you were putting off since summer holidays, because it was going to be this yantiv and that yantiv and this yantiv, in Cheshvan is the month where you got to get down to it because you've got no more excuses. So in the month of Cheshvan is the month that you're supposed to tie up all the ends of all the stuff that you didn't do before. But actually, in terms of like energy, the month of Cheshvan is quite a heavy, dark month. It's often referred to as Mar Cheshvan, which means bitter Cheshvan. What's bitter about this month is that in a sense, it's a kind of an anticlimax to the month, because we've come out of this very spiritually high Tishrei and Elul, and hit this month of Cheshvan where it's parallel, but actually what's happening around us in the world, which is it's the month where the clocks change, it's the month where winter begins, it gets very dark, so it feels heavy and it feels dark. And if you have personally felt that the last few months, the last few weeks have felt particularly difficult and dark, it's not just you. You are just sensitive to the world around you and you're picking up on what's happening in the world around you. But the shift is that in the previous months before this, it was like a continuous download from above, right? We had this constant, very powerful connection. In the month of Cheshvan, if you want to feel inspiration and you want to feel connection, it's not going to come from above. It's going to have to come from inside. And that's not so easy. That takes extra work. So you have to know that if you did find energy and you did find inspiration in the month of Cheshvan, well done you. You get double points for that because it's much harder to access in the month of Cheshvan. And if you've been feeling that this is a particularly dark and heavy and difficult and like you're trudging through mud a bit in this last month, it's coming to an end. And we're about to enter the month of Kislev, which is the month of light and miracles. So let's figure out what the shift is and how we enter this month in the right way. So when we said before that the Sefer Yetzirah, which gives us some kind of hints as to what energy is held in this month, it often there's all sorts of things that hint to the month. So every month is represented by a Hebrew letter that created that month. Every month is represented by one of the Shvatim, one of the tribes. Every month is represented by a color, by a body part, by a body sense. There's all sorts of things. I'm going to, for the purposes of tonight, just draw on two of those, which we can kind of use practically in our own lives, and then we'll talk about other things. So the letter that was used to create this month, whatever that means in a mystical sense, the letter that was used to create this month is the letter Samach. And the letter Samach is tied in with the word somech, which means to rely on, to depend on, to lean on. We know that in davening it says somech noflim, who supports and holds up those who are falling. So already the original energy of the month is telling us that there's something in this month that has to do with to depend on, to lean on, to trust. And of course, we're talking about depending on and leaning on and trusting Hashem. And I think that also, everything that's happening around us is tied in. So it's tied into the weather, it's tied into what the world looks like around us, and it's also tied into what's going on in the bigger world around us, which is that I think progressively what's been happening in the last year since October the 7th, and probably before that, but like in our consciousness, what's been happening since October the 7th is that the situation that the world is in has led us to a place where if you're not going to samech, if you're not going to rely on the support of Hashem, what are you going to rely on? Because throughout the last year, almost everything else has proven itself unreliable. In other words, if you're relying on politics or governments or the rest of the world to love us or whatever it is, forget it. This month comes at a perfect time that just reminds us it's okay. You have Hashem to rely on. Hashem is there to support you. And really, that is all we need, even though it doesn't feel nice to be not liked by the rest of the world, but it makes a very stark, it makes our reality very clear to us. There's only one source to depend on for our support. So this month is there to remind us about that trust. And it tells us that the vessel to empower miracles comes through trust. In other words, if you want to open up a vessel for miracles, you have to put yourself in the vulnerable space of trust. And that's not always an easy thing, because as human beings, our default is that we like to be in control. And we like to feel we have a hand on what's going on, but we know that that's a little bit of an illusion. Outside, it's winter. We know that Shabbos is coming in at like 3:50 something. You basically wake up and make kiddush these days, right? So it's winter. The days are short. It's dark for a long part of the day. And if you have any daylight to look outside in your garden, you'll notice that it looks like nothing ever grew there and like nothing's ever going to grow there again, right? The ground looks cold and hard. There's no leaves on the plants and everything looks dead. And it's very hard to imagine that anything is ever going to come out of that again, right? It's very hard to imagine that it's ever going to be August again when you look out the window, right? It's hard to imagine that there'll ever be summer. So the idea of this concept of trust is that even though it looks like nothing is going to grow again, and even though we don't have evidence to tell us that something's growing under the ground, you've got to trust that something's growing under the ground, that the beginnings are happening under the ground now, but you can't see it yet. And that this is the month to place trust. The trust is like without physical evidence to hold up your trust. In other words, you've got to be vulnerable and be brave enough to put your trust in for what's coming soon. It's not evident and visible yet, but it's coming soon. And in the story of Hanukkah, when when things looked dark and hopeless and like the world was in a terrible place, you know what the real miracle of Hanukkah is? Even though we talk about the real miracle being those lights that lasted for 8 days, even though they weren't supposed to, the miracle before that, before the lasting for 8 days, is the fact that they looked for the oil. The fact that they had hope enough to think that they would find that oil, that they would find a clean, pure vial of oil that could be lit in a time of such desecration. That's a miracle. To have hope when things are so dark and difficult that there's nothing hopeful to be seen, and yet to be able to dig down and find hope in that, that's a miracle. So, in the time of the greatest darkness, the fact that they had hope and that they could find some measure of light, that's the energy that's running through this month. That there was a time where things looked very dark, just like maybe they do right now, and yet they held on to the hope that something was coming soon, even though it wasn't evidence. You know, when you make an appointment with somebody, when you make an appointment to meet someone, let's say you're having an arrangement with somebody in half an hour, right? And they haven't arrived yet, and you can't see them, and you don't know for certain that they're going to arrive on time. You can only see or envision that their arrival by means of trust. In other words, I have some kind of trust with this person that I know they're going to show up around about the time they said they're going to show up. Because otherwise, you could be sitting there all day long. What's making you sit there? The trust that that person is eventually going to come round about the time that they're supposed to come. So in the same way, when our days are cold and dark and we can't see the warmth that we're looking for clearly, and right now it feels like it's never going to be summer again. And right now it feels like nothing's ever going to grow again. And specifically at this time of year, a lot of people suffer from SAD, from seasonal affective disorder, which is a very real thing, is that the dark makes you feel almost like depressed. And it really saps the energy out of you. This is the month to hang on to that concept of trust that better things are coming, that light is coming, even if you can't see it right now. And it's telling you that in the month of Kislev, you don't even have to work so hard on that. It's kind of like ready to be grabbed if you're willing to make yourself a vessel for it. That sense of trust is like inherent in the month already. Now, the sense of this month, okay, so because we have the obvious senses that we talk about hearing and seeing and smelling, but there's 12 months, so we've got to find 12 different senses to fill the months. So some of them are slightly more obscure. The sense in this month is the sense of sleep. Now, all these things connect to each other. So the sense, the body part, the letter, the weather at the time, right? What's the connection between the sense of sleep? And in fact, by the way, when it talks about a sense of sleep, it actually calls it a chush. And a chush is really translated as a talent, like a chush of sleep. So if any of you feel like you have a talent for sleep, right? What does a talent for sleep mean? Who's a person who's talented at sleeping? The kind of person who, wherever you are and whatever's going on, it doesn't matter. If you're tired, you can close your eyes and fall asleep. Why is that a talent? Because a lot of people find it very difficult to fall asleep. If you are stressed or you're anxious or you're worried or you're not feeling hopeful and you can't see the light, it's hard to fall asleep. So a talent for falling asleep means the ability to fall asleep whenever you want to fall asleep. There's actually a talent in that. How does that tie into the space that we find ourselves now in terms of the fact that it's winter outside? What does sleep have to do with winter? Well, winter is kind of a time of like hibernation, right? The weather almost makes you want to sleep. It's why sometimes at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you could feel a bit like it feels like midnight. You're that tired. It kind of is something about it that makes you feel a little bit sleepy. How does the concept of sleep relate to the idea of trust? Well, the idea of trust is that actually you can only really fall asleep when you have a sense of trust. What do you have to trust when you fall asleep? First of all, you have to trust that you're going to wake up again the next morning, okay? And also you have to trust that, believe it or not, the world can run without you. You can switch off for a little bit, okay? So what does that mean? We have this illusion of control that tells us if you're worrying about something and you feel anxious about something, if you can stay awake and keep feeling worried and anxious about it, that's going to do something good for the world, right? That's going to be really, really productive. So the concept of trust is that I can allow myself to stop worrying, or to put aside whatever it is that I'm thinking about and allow myself to switch off and go to sleep. And it's tied into the idea of trust that Hashem runs the world and Hashem knows what's best. And me switching off is not going to, me staying up and continuing to worry is not going to get anything, productive done. If anything, it's just going to make me more tired, right? So there's an element of trust tied into the concept of sleep. And if a person is able to allow themselves to be that vessel for trust, then they develop the chush for sleep, the talent for sleeping, because really the talent for sleeping is the ability to trust, the ability to switch off that worry for a little bit and allow oneself to just give in to the need of sleep. Okay, so that's the sense for this month. Okay, so now let's and also just to know that in every single month, the thing that happens in each month could have only happened in that month. So in other words, the light and miracles connected to the story of Hanukkah could only have happened in the month of Kislev. Kislev held the right energy to allow that whole story to unfold. It couldn't have unfolded in another month. Okay, so what happened during Hanukkah could only happen because of their ability to trust. That's how the whole story came to be. I mean, if you look at the story of Hanukkah, right, what the war that happened in Hanukkah is a crazy, crazy, illogical war. Who went out to fight? Not the nation's best army, right? Who went out to fight? A group of very skinny, ill-prepared yeshiva bochrim, okay? They were not training and they were not soldiers and they weren't equipped for this job. So it takes, first of all, it defies logic, but also it actually tells us, it says that because the miracle of Hanukkah came as a result of the emunah and bitachon that the Chashmonaim demonstrated, that's why it occurred in Kislev. And since Hanukkah is about bitachon and trust, it came about, the story came about through the Kohanim. Why? Because the Kohanim are not warriors. That's not their job. That's another group of people's job. The Kohanim, that does not fall into their remit. So it was specifically the Kohanim because they really had to invest their full trust in Hashem that they would win. They weren't equipped for this war. So it was like walking into war saying, we absolutely don't have the skills for this. There's no ways we're going to survive this unless Hashem, you are driving this and behind us. You've got to be in a very, very trusting place to walk into a war like that. So that is the theme of this whole story and how they were able to walk into that space is that they were so full of trust and bitachon. And it actually says that a hint to this can be found in the word kohen, which has the same gematria as the word bitachon. I'll allow you to work that one out afterwards, but kohen and bitachon. And that comes from this chesed la'Avraham. Do you want a source for that? So as human beings, our default is that we like to be comfortable. It's easiest for us to be in our comfort zone. And we don't like to we don't like to challenge ourselves or make ourselves uncomfortable. Being in a place where you allow yourself to be vulnerable and trust is an uncomfortable place to be, okay? Because you don't have the definite reassurance. You don't have something to prove to you that the thing that you're waiting for and wishing for and hoping for is definitely going to happen. You're going on trust. You're going on bitachon, and that is a vulnerable, uncomfortable space to be. But this is the month that encourages us and it tells us you don't accomplish great things when you make yourself stay comfortable. That's not where great things come from. Great things come from when we're willing to kind of push ourselves a little bit and push our trust a little bit and put ourselves in a place that we wouldn't comfortably normally find ourselves. The thing about trust, though, is that it takes a bit of balance because there's trust and there's trust. There's the trust that we're talking about, which is stepping out of your comfort zone and challenging yourself. But there's also what we could call trust is being a little bit complacent. In other words, I trust that Hashem, everything's going to fall into place. I trust. That can also stunt your growth because it makes you complacent and it makes you not work hard. That's not actually stepping out of your comfort zone either. That's just kind of almost being lazy a bit. So this month comes with this inherent theme of bitachon and trust to teach us how to balance this concept in our own lives, to be trusting enough to allow ourselves to fall asleep at night. You don't control the world. It's an illusion. Let go. But to also be trusting enough that sometimes we're brave enough to make ourselves vulnerable and open up that space and open up that vessel, which is the space that miracles can happen in. Okay? So we're going to hold those themes aside for a second, and I want to move on to something which is really the greater theme of the story of Hanukkah, okay? Which is, as we discussed, this war that happened, the war of the few against the many, the weak against the strong, a very illogical war that doesn't make sense. So in order to have an understanding as to what this war really was about, we'll talk about the concept that generally life has an order, a natural order or a sequence to it, okay? So what that means is day follows night, sunrise follows sunset, seasons follow each other. And we depend on that in life to keep us a little bit sane, okay? We need it to be that there's something that we can kind of trust will be the next thing that happens. So it's good for us to know that Tuesday comes after Monday, okay? And that Thursday will come after Wednesday. That's a good thing for us because it allows some level of like dependability. My 11-year-old daughter was telling me the other day that she doesn't like this concept at all. She wants it to be that school mustn't be so like, like a dependable like this. They must add a bit of like spontaneity. They must just sometimes say like, on Tuesday, we're not going to have school in the day, we're going to have it in the night, and then we're not having school on a Wednesday, and then we're going to have school in a different place, right? So kids like that concept, right? But as adults, even though we maybe like sometimes a bit of spontaneity and fun, there's something quite nice and comforting about the reliability of the sequences that surround us in nature, okay? And in a mystical sense, when we talk about the mystical power inherent in numbers, the number 7 is always associated with this physical, dependable, sequential world around us, okay? 7 are the days of the week. 7 are the colors in a rainbow. 7 are the musical notes. It's all the things that have kind of like the 4 walls of being in this world. They're dependable, they physical, they're something that we depend on that kind of sequence. So what 7 symbolizes from a spiritual perspective is completion within a natural framework. Like when you get to Friday, you've completed the week. So you can tick that off. It's within the natural sequence of the world. 7 is the way we feel after we've had a productive day. If you've managed to tick off all the things on your to-do list, that's a full 7 day. You've done well, okay? So 7 is that feeling of completion in the physical world. And 7 represents all the sort of like earthly masterpieces of our lives. Then there's the number 8. And 8 represents not the natural world, but the supernatural world, or not the physical world, the metaphysical world. It's what lies above nature and what lies above the physical. And what that really means is it's the world above and beyond our primary senses, okay? So you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't smell it, but you know that it's there, okay? So the world of 8 is, in order to give it some kind of context, imagine that feeling you get where you sit at a beautiful Shabbos meal, okay? And when that meal finishes, there's just a feeling, and you can't explain that feeling. It's just a feeling. That's a feeling of 8. When you hear a beautiful tefillah, when you stand at the kotel, when you have a beautiful, but it can happen anywhere. It can happen at your kitchen sink while you're washing the dishes. If you feel a moment of connection that you wouldn't quite be able to put into words, but you feel it as definitively as if it was physical, that is the experience or the touching of the concept of 8, which is the metaphysical, which is the above this physical world. So really the way you can describe what 8 is 8 is our connectivity, our spirit, our soul, our neshama, the part that sort of like, really it's the part of us that makes life meaningful, that gives life something deep to it. That is 8. So if we just lived in the world of 7, we would be living in the world of sequence, order, dependability, but nothing above and beyond that. No depth, no meaning, no connection, none of that world that you can't describe, but we know that when we feel it, there's something very powerful about that. It's kind of like that's what carries us. So 8 is touching almost like another world. Now, when we talk about the story of what happened in Hanukkah and this war between the Jews and the Greeks, 8 is exactly what the Greeks did not believe in, okay? If you want to talk about what represented the Greeks as a people, and this is not the people who live in Greece now, okay? We're talking about a nation that doesn't exist anymore. What represented the Greeks as a people is that they were all about 7. We're talking about very educated people, very sophisticated people. It's not that they, didn't have any idea. They were all about the world of academia and education and sports and physical prowess. That was their thing. But they existed in the world of 7. And because the world of 7 they were so passionate about that, the world of 8 is highly offensive to that. In other words, because what the world of 8 is, the world of 8 tells you that there's such a thing as morals and values and connection and the divine and meaning. And somebody who's consumed by the concept of 7 is offended by the concept of 8 because it throws a massive spoke in the wheels. It makes it uncomfortable. Who wants to think about that when you're worrying about pleasure and accomplishment and, getting through the things that you're supposed to get through in this physical world? So what was really happening in this war between the Jews and the Greeks was not just a war between two groups of people. It was a war of ideologies, a war of ethos, a war of cultures. That was a war of 7 against 8, because what represents a Jew is a Jew's connection to 8. You see, constantly, in every single day, a Jew has the opportunity to turn sevens into eights, because we can't just live in a world of sevens. So what turns a 7 into an 8? Well, a perfect example is the fact that you're about to be mafresh challah, right? What is challah already? It's like bread. It's like the ingredients that you add into it are nothing spiritual. There's nothing spiritual about the ingredients, right? But the minute you do it with the intention of making it like Kodesh Shabbos Kodesh, the minute you take the piece of challah aside, the minute you say the bracha, the minute you have an intention and daven, now that turns from something ordinary into something extraordinary. And that means that's taking a 7 and turning it into an 8. So 7 is food, right? If you kept on eating food only because the food was in front of you, that is living in a world of 7. But the minute you take an apple and recognize that it comes from a source and make a bracha on that apple and consume it in the knowledge that it was made by a creator and it's there to fuel you to be productive in your life, you've just turned a 7 into an 8. And you can do that many, many times in a day. So a Jew's job in the world is to constantly be looking for ways to turn 7s into 8s. And that's what this month and the story and the power of Hanukkah is here to remind us, is our ability to constantly look at our own lives and see where can we transform these 7s into 8s, and look at where the Greek nation is now. And look at where we are now, despite the odds. Look at where we are now. That the world of 8 is always the one that trumps the world of 7. But we have to keep on reminding ourselves that, because we can easily be drawn into the allure of just the world of 7 because it's comfortable. Sometimes moving into 8 is uncomfortable. And in fact, if we look at the journey through the story of Hanukkah, when we light our Hanukkah candles and we get to the 8th night, the last night of Hanukkah, what's that night called? It's called Zos Hanukkah. What does Zos Hanukkah mean? This is Hanukkah. Why? Because when you get to the 8th night, when you finally make it from 7 into 8, that's the real deal. That's what Hanukkah is really about. That's what that light is really about. It's an otherworldly light. It's not just a light of, the flame on the candle. It's an otherworldly light. And that, Zos Hanukkah, that's really what Hanukkah is all about. So Hanukkah is a time for us also, and Kislev in the lead up to Hanukkah is a time for us to reflect on how in our own personal lives we can best turn 7s into 8s. Where are we getting stuck in our own lives at allowing things to be 7s, and how can we upgrade it to an 8? Where can we find places to make the mundane holy? Where can we find places to make the ordinary extraordinary? Just as an example, if you're sitting at your Shabbos table, it could be a lot of chit chat, which makes it just like any other day. The minute you add a Dvar Torah, or your kid shares something about the parasha or whatever it is, you've just upgraded a mundane experience to a holy experience. You've just turned a 7 into an 8. When you start looking for it, you'll be amazed at how many opportunities. And this month is kind of bringing us that opportunity to tune into that. It actually says that Hanukkah is going to remain at the time of Mashiach. It's still going to be something that we celebrate only because of this unbelievably powerful level of godly revelation that comes into the world around Kislev. We don't want to miss out on that. We're still going to be able to grab onto that light. And I'll tell you something else, that for those of us that have learned before in Kislev, I'm sure I mention this every single year, but there's an idea that's brought down by a few sources that says, and I'm giving you a prior warning here because we haven't gotten to Rosh Chodesh yet, right? You've got good time to think about this over the weekend and how you plan to approach this, because it's only on Monday, okay? So it says, anybody who doesn't complain the whole way from Rosh Chodesh Kislev till the end of Kislev, big miracles are going to happen for that person. Okay, so I'm setting you a giant challenge here. Maybe some of you have done this before. What does that mean? First of all, how are you supposed to not complain for any time? Like, what does that look like? Okay. And why is that a place where miracles are going to happen? What's the relation between the two? So first of all, what does it mean to not complain? To not complain means every time you feel that a negative is about to come out of your mouth, find a way to switch it to a positive. Find a way to find a good in that, right? So when your kid is giving you a run for your money and you want to, and you're losing it a little bit, And then you can turn that around and say, wow, this child has got unbelievable energy. And one day we are going to find the right way to channel this, right? That's taking something that could have been a complaint like, oh, you are draining me, into, wow, you are an unbelievably powerful human being. And we're going to make sure that this is channeled in the right direction as you get older, right? So there's many, many ways of flipping over something that you might have wanted to complain about into like, how can I think of the good here? Now, why does that tell you that that is a place that miracles will happen? So I can't tell you what happens in the metaphysical world. And perhaps, we really do become a vessel for overt and visible miracles to happen. But I'll tell you what else happens is that when you become a person who looks for the positive and doesn't complain, that is a place that light and miracles happen because you become a changed person and you see the world differently. You can tune into the positive things in the world around you and you can see miracles. They might have been there all along, but if you're in a state of negativity and complaining, you wouldn't even see them. So that's also why it's telling you that miracles can happen. So if you feel able to challenge yourself in that way, your chance starts from Monday. Let's see how far you can take it. Now, I would even say, even if you have some slip ups during that time, keep going. There's definitely no harm. You can become a changed person through that exercise throughout the month of Kislev. And in the idea, along with the idea that, not complaining is something that changes you because it helps you to see the positive. So we're supposed to be looking in this month for the light and for the miracles. That's what we want to try tune into, and that's what we want to kind of try download. So how do we tune into the light of this month, and how do we tune into these miracles? Okay, the first thing is trying to complain less, but just to think about how to get to that place. So the Torah teaches us that the way we see affects the things we are seeing, okay? What does that mean? The way we choose to look at something affects how we perceive that thing. And it actually has the power to change that thing. So I'll give you a very physical example of that. The way you choose to see your child changes the way you perceive that child, and it changes that child. Because if they know they're being seen in a positive light and you're seeing their best and you're complimenting them and it will change that person. So think of how many other places that example is true, that the way you see something can actually change that thing. So the example that's given to us is the Torah story of the spies that are sent into Israel to go scout out the land. And it says that the commandment, or how this was spoken, is that it says, God spoke to Moshe saying, send out men, they'll observe the land which I'm giving to the children of Israel and see what the land is like. Our perception of the story is that they were set up to be spies. But what is it that they are told? Go and see what the land is like. What are they supposed to do when they go see what the land is like? Moshe sends them out to the land on a deeper level, not only just to visually see what's happening around them. He sends them to see the land, but to actually, through their seeing, affect the land, to almost kind of like claim ownership of it in a sense, feel connected to it, and therefore almost like uplift and upgrade the actual land because of their connection to it and the way they see it. What happens at the end of the story? 10 out of these 12 scouts who've been sent to see the land come back and they fail their mission, because what do they say when they come back? They say, we saw there were giants and we were in our own eyes as grasshoppers, and so were we in their eyes. Now, they didn't have conversations with the natives there to find out how they perceived them and what they thought of them. How did they come back and know that the giants perceived them as grasshoppers? Because it says that's how we saw ourselves. So that's how they saw us. We went in there with a negative vision, and therefore we perceived the whole experience negatively. Why did they go in with a negative vision? Why did they go in to witness what was happening in the land of Israel negatively? Because actually, those 10 scouts didn't want to live in the land of Israel. Why? Because living in the land of Israel would be a massive step out of their comfort zone. Because until this point, being in the desert meant absolute total protection from Hashem, living with a pillar and a cloud around them and constantly protected. If they went into the land of Israel, they would have to take some ownership. They'd have to work the land. that have to accomplish. But through that comes a level of accomplishment that you can't feel when you're being looked after all the time. So there'd be a massive growth that would come from that. But they were resistant to it because they wanted to stay in their comfort zone. And because they felt resistant, they felt negative. And so when they entered the land, they were already saying, this is going to be bad. And because they said it was going to be bad, it was bad. And you can apply that to any experience in life. If you go into, I don't know, an interview and say, this is the wrong job for me and they're going to hate me, you can be sure that it's the wrong job for you and they're going to hate you, because that is what you are. If you want to talk, what the rest of the world calls manifesting, this is that, okay? That if we go in with a bad eye, looking at something badly, it's going to reflect back at us. Now, two of the other scouts who went in, who were Yoshua and Kalev, came out with a very different experience, because the way they came out, first of all, they went in positively. They wanted to see the land as good, and they were passionate and they were excited about what could happen in the land of Israel. And even though they observed with their visual ability the same as everybody else was observing, how did they translate it? They said, we should go up and take possession of the land because we can definitely do it. They were empowered. They were passionate. They were excited. They went in there hoping to see the good, and so they saw the good. And in seeing the good, they changed the nature of the land. They made it inhabitable because of the way that they viewed it. So that means that to a degree, we can choose the things we see. It's true that we don't have control over the events that happen around us. We don't. And plenty of times we find ourselves in circumstances where it's the last thing we would have chosen. But we still have a choice in terms of how we perceive it, how we translate it, and how it reflects back at us. And we should be conscious that when a person sees things, they see things deeply. It's not just a visual, physical experience, a spiritual experience. And what we see affects us, and we affect what we see. So, it says when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And that's another kind of mantra that we can take through the month of Kislev, through Hanukkah and beyond, is in choosing to see light and miracles, more light and miracles happen and become apparent because you tuned into it and you want to see it. You switched on to those things. The Lubavitcher Rebbe would say, and I know there was a movement of having these little rubber bands around your arm with this. I think it's a good idea to bring those back, which said, Tracht gut, wird sein gut. Think good and it'll be good. What does it mean, think good and it'll be good? That sounds a bit also like the idea of manifesting. If you just sit here and imagine that the world will be good, suddenly the world's going to become good. Not necessarily, but you'll see it as good because you're open to good and you're thinking of good and you're hoping for good and you hope and you want to see the light. So think good and it'll be good because you are changing your perspective. When you change the way you see things, the things you see change. And that is also part of the power and the energy around us during this month. Now, remember, right at the beginning, we spoke about this idea that on the very first Hanukkah, this original story happened. There was this unusual light that entered the world. And only once the Chachamim saw that the next year, that very same light came down into the world again, then they said, right, this is Hanukkah now, because every year at this time of year, the same light is going to enter the world. And we have to create an experience where we can download this light and be open to this light and become vessels for this light. What is the light that we're talking about? So we said, Kislev is Kislev, a pocket for Lamed Vav, for the 36. What's the 36? At the beginning of the creation of the world, there was an unearthly spiritual light that entered the world called the Or Haganuz. And this light that shone was a enormous explosion of light. And after 36 hours, it was withdrawn from the world because it was a light that was almost too powerful for this world. And it says that it was a light that was for the tzaddikim. It was a light that was only there for those who could kind of access it. So it was going to be kept aside for the tzaddikim. So we no longer have that Or HaGanuz constantly shining into the world. But there are small pockets in time where that Or HaGanuz does shine into the world. First of all, it says that in learning Torah, you have access to little bits of Or HaGanuz. But it also says, what's the connection between the 36 hours of that original light that shone in the world in Hanukkah, is that over the whole time period of Hanukkah, cumulatively, we light 36 candles. And what Kislev is telling us, it's a pocket of those 36 hours of light are contained in the month of Hanukkah. And if you want to access it, it's here from Rosh Chodesh Kislev up until the end, but most powerfully over the days of Hanukkah. And as you light each candle, what you bring into the world is not just physical light, but a tiny glimpse and a tiny glimmer of that original light that was created right at the beginning of the world. And what are we talking about? What is the light that we're talking about? The light that comes from fire, when you look at a fire, the light that comes from a fire is always dependent on the burning and destroying of something else. Okay, so in other words, you cannot keep a fire going unless it's burning coal, paper, wood. In order for that fire to burn, something else has to be destroyed. Divine light, or haganuz, otherworldly light, is self-derived. It destroys nothing. So when we know the story, the well-known story of the burning bush, right? What does it mean, a bush that kept on burning, but the actual bush never burned? It's telling us Moshe encountered divine light. He encountered Or HaGanuz, a self-sustaining light and fire that burns and destroys nothing. So it shines like a fire, but the bush isn't consumed and the bush isn't destroyed. And the unique thing about this kind of light is that it doesn't necessarily take away the darkness. It somehow shines within the darkness. And that Or HaGanuz, that hidden light, this divine light that burns within the darkness of creation, but doesn't destroy creation. So it's happening at the same time as there's darkness around us, means at the same time as you stand surrounded by difficult and hard things happening, there's a self-sustaining, powerful, divine light that keeps itself alight. It's self-sustained. And it's the light of Hanukkah that's revealed in the darkest nights of the year. This is happening Hanukkah when the days are the shortest and the days are the darkest, and that correlates with us feeling like it's the darkest and the hardest and the longest, and the darkest times of exile and the darkest time of what's happening to our people. And that really is how one small jug of oil lit by the Kohanim lasted for 8 days, because it didn't consume the oil. Because it was Or HaGanuz, divine light that's self-sustaining and doesn't consume and destroy the thing that lights it. And that's the light that we want to access, is that light that is self-sustaining, that doesn't need to destroy anything around it. You know, we know that human beings often become very inspired when we're met by a challenge. And there are times when the pure oil of a person's soul shines brightly. You can get to the essence of who that person is. But life is such that that waxes and wanes because other things come up and the inspiration doesn't always last for a very long time. We have to constantly challenge ourselves to get back to that place. But Hanukkah reminds us that deep inside every single one of us is a tiny little bit of that light as well. Is that self-sustaining light that burns and destroys nothing, that can burn however dark what's happening around us is, that light can keep burning. And our job is to believe and to know that every single one of us has that unique light to bring into the world, bar no one. That that the world is counting on each and every one of our unique light. So we all owe it to ourselves to try tune into that light. And this month of Kislev gives us the opportunity to think about that. Like, what light are you bringing into the world? So as Kislev is about to enter on Monday, may we learn during this Kislev how to fully trust Hashem and not become complacent in our trust. May we all have a month of very good sleep because we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and give into that trust. May we be conscious of our power to choose how to interpret and how to see what's around us and know the profound effect that it has on us. May we always learn to look for the 8 and how to turn the 7 into the 8. And may we become vessels for real, revealed light and miracles. Wishing every single one of you a beautiful, meaningful, connected Kislev full of light. Thank you, ladies.
Oh, Ora, you never disappoint us. And I can see Annie sending you lots of love. She's received all of it. And then I got an address from somebody. And I don't know if should I say Haley? And then I'm thinking like, and you know what? This is what we're doing. Because even in Haley's address, she has she sent me this. I live at number 8 HA8, 8NR. And I'm like, was that for me? And
That's
she
a
said,
really holy
hey,
address.
the 8. And then we're now going to get a stick that holds in front of us a piece of paper that she wrote very beautifully that says, do not complain, find the good. But if we don't have it like right here reminding us at all moments, just think of Aura's beautiful voice every time you're thinking like that. Just remind ourselves, just don't complain. And if we can do that, we will have the miracle, because the miracle will be for ourselves actually finding it within ourselves and reminding ourselves. And when we do that, our days change, and it is hard. It was like nighttime at 4 o'clock. Do you know what time Shabbos candle lighting is tomorrow? It's like, I don't know, is it 3:30 yet tomorrow, 3:35? And you just like say, okay. So if we prepared though, and we know that we've got to find that. So Mirza Hashem, we're going to continue with this, and it was really very beautiful. And we should just really all be blessed to all be able to do that. And really thank you. So I'm going to make a bracha on on my sourdough. And yeah, just to remind everybody, I do know who is speaking next week, and I can't remember, but I think Essie is with us, Essie Lazarus. And then on the Tuesday night after that, you will all be getting the flyers about Rabbi Mizrahi. Tuesday, Wednesday. I know there's another wonderful event on the Monday night as well with Charlene Amanoff and I don't remember. You have to tell me names. I don't know the singers' names, but apparently amazing American singer in for the Zakani. And you know what? We all have to support every single one of our events. And that's really what the most important thing is, together, to be able to bring us all together and help to have that Or Haganuz shining, 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 shining. That's what we are all looking for. Okay, let's go. Okay, I've got my towel over my 2 bowls. I have a lot of dough in here. Let's go. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu, להפריש חלה מן העיסה. הרי זו חלה. In the zechus of the mitzvah of Hafrashas Challah, at the Ezra Hashem, we should have continued shalom, that we should really only have simchas, all refuahs, Yeshuas for all of Klal Yisrael. And really the miracle of Hanukkah should start with us from now, from tonight, literally working on ourselves to bring ourselves into a beautiful, better place to be living. And if that is something that we can all do, and we each take responsibility for ourselves in that, then hopefully that will be something that we will be able to make a difference in the world. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Aura. And I've just had to send a few messages. So I will send out the recording as soon as I get it, and I will post it on all the groups, and feel free to share it. Okay, wishing everybody a Shabbat of Shalom, a good Shabbos, and in Hashem, we should just continue to do